All right, we can get started. So, hello everyone. I'm Sophia. I'm a client success manager here at ClickUp. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into our webinar today for agencies. We have some really exciting content to go through with you today. It's awesome to see so many people in attendance. We have creeping up on 200 participants already. So, as usual, if you've attended one of our webinars in the past, we'd love to get a sense of where you're all tuning in from. So in the Zoom chat, if you want to give us a shout out, we'd love to hear from you. So as you would expect, today's webinar will be focused around how you can use ClickUp for agencies and also to reinforce remote team productivity. I'm sure that all of you are dealing with at least some professional changes right now. And in general, communication that used to be face-to-face is now online. So it can be really difficult to know what's going on in your company and track what people are working on now, as well as what's getting done. So my co-host and I will take some time today to explain how ClickUp can help, and we'll also leave plenty of time for your questions at the end. So just to jump back into our chat and seeing people from Edmonton, Pittsburgh, DC, Spain, Slovakia, India, all over the place, Switzerland, Germany. So it's really, really great to see everyone here. Libya, wow. So all time zones and all countries. It's pretty awesome to see you all here. So thank you for your time. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. So this webinar will be recorded. We will post it on our website, and you'll also get a copy of it later so you can watch it again or share it with others at your convenience. We also have some great ClickUp customer support reps in attendance who will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have about ClickUp for agencies as we go through the content today. So if you do have a question for our support team, please send that in via the Q&A tab in your Zoom menu. That's where we'll be moderating those questions. And feel free to use the Zoom chat tab to just chat amongst yourselves, but just know that we won't be monitoring that one for questions. All right, so that should be just about all the housekeeping notes. So before I introduce my co-host, I just wanted to start by sharing a quick bit of background about how ClickUp started and how you can actually think of it in terms of using it for your agency. So our CEO conceived of the idea for ClickUp while building his previous company from the ground up. And he found himself so frustrated with other project management tools as it was impossible to find one app where he could put everything together. So ClickUp is really meant to be the answer to this problem. This is a place where you can put not only your tasks and your projects, but you can also create docs and you can have notes all alongside one another. So it's really going to help you reduce context switching and communicate more effectively with your coworkers. And especially right now during this crazy remote time, this is a really great way to stay productive and keep your communication on track. So with all of that said, I'd now love to introduce my co-host, Gray MacKenzie. He is the CEO of Zenpilot. So Gray, would you care to say hello and give a quick summary of your background?
For sure. Thank you, Sophia. Yeah, I appreciate everyone jumping on and spending time here today. Sophia, do you want me to take over the screen sharing? Do you want to hand stuff over and we'll
That would be great.
and we'll pass things back and forth as we go? Awesome. So I see people from all over the place, some familiar names, a lot of people who I don't know yet, but excited to spend the next hour or so together and jump in. So I'll just pull up my screen here. And let me know if you're able to see that. Are you seeing it, Sophia? Are you seeing?
Looks good.
We're in the right place. Awesome. Well, great to connect. I am Gray. I'm one of the co-founders here at Zenpilot. My business partner, Andrew Dymski, is also on the line. This is Andrew and I a couple years ago, back when we could go to events right before jumping on the stage and speaking at the Inbound conference that HubSpot puts on every year. But we've been in the agency space for the past 10 years. We've had the chance to work with 1,600 plus different digital agencies and then speak to a bunch more. We host a podcast called Agency Journey, where we interview agency owners and leaders. And we've had the chance to do 200 plus interviews with agency folks. So we've built a project management platform. That was kind of our our initial journey into this space and into doing training and coaching for agencies around their operational side of things. And ClickUp came out in 2018. We wound up kind of transitioning things over and pointing a bunch of our past customers to ClickUp. And it was a super successful transition and migration for agencies to go from the PM tool that we had built into ClickUp. And so we've been doing ClickUp consulting and implementation for agencies for the past 2+ years, entering ClickUp's vetted consultant program. So we've got a lot of expertise in the agency space, and I'm excited to share with everyone kind of the best of what we've learned, what we've seen from the best agencies in terms of how they organize and run their agencies inside of ClickUp itself. So I'm going to start with kind of the principles of what we need. We're going to real quickly hit that, and then I'm big on getting right into the substance itself inside of ClickUp. So this background and context is critical. If we don't understand what we're trying to accomplish, it's hard to just jump right into the tool and build things correctly. But the common theme that we see time and again, and this is the story behind the name Zenpilot even, is just the chaos that exists in so many digital agencies. And so in order to enable the ability to scale and scale profitably, agencies have to figure out how to replace that chaos with clarity. And there's three key principles here. If you're here, you're practicing the first one, which is trying to get clarity and lead the team better. So clear leadership is one. The right structure, which we're going to go through today, is another one. And the third one is consistent accountability, which we'll also touch on, which is once we've got your ClickUp set up correctly, what comes next? How do we make sure everyone's operating off the same rules of engagement? So we'll dive right into that in just a second inside of ClickUp itself. So when agencies come to us, there's typically a couple things that they're looking for, whether they know how to break it down or not, but there's 4 primary objectives that they're looking for. The first one is just building a single source of truth, being able to centralize and say, hey, this is the one place to go for all context. When we need to go track down what happened or what's on our plate or what's forward looking, that there's one main hub for that. That single source of truth needs to create clarity for everyone. So you really have in your agency, you've got an owner role, you've got the leadership team, you've got a managerial component depending on size of your agency. And then you've also got the individual contributor role. And there's a lot of bridging between those 3 types of roles. But we need to create clarity, not just for one of those roles, but for all 3 of those types of roles. Then the third piece is we're looking for a way to take the natural byproduct of your business, which is all of this activity that happens, and harness that and turn it into data that's going to empower better decision-making and allow the entire team to do better work faster. So if those are the goals that we're trying to accomplish, then the things that we need here, we can break this down in 4 main parts. One is a structure for all work. It can't just be our client servicing work. This needs to be a comprehensive home. ClickUp needs to be the home for all of the work that your agency does and the place that we're going to centralize all of that activity. We need clear rules of engagement for the entire team to operate around. We need this to be championed by at least one person internally. Ideally, we wind up with a couple of people, so there's some backup, but there's got to be one person who's for sure leading the charge on ClickUp internally. We call this person the ClickUp champion. And then the last piece is just consistent accountability as things go and grow and scale, and that leads to continuous improvement in the platform itself. So with that context, I'm going to pull you directly into ClickUp. We're going to go in and look at how we structure this for agencies, why we recommend this structure, and what are some of the decision points and decision trees that would impact maybe choosing a different way to set up your structure. And at the end of this, for everyone who sticks with us today, Sophia and I talked about this. We're going to give away one of our most popular templates that we give agencies who are working with us from a process side of things. So stay tuned for that coming up in a little bit. But first, I'm going to switch over to ClickUp here. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to share again over inside of ClickUp. And we're going to take a look at the structure itself. Sophia, is that coming through for you again?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So the first thing I'll point out is right now, Sophia did, I think, almost everything you asked me to do. I think the one thing I left up here, is the favorites bar. So I'm normally a dark mode person. If you're normally dark mode, put it in the comments. I want to know how many people do we have on here? Let's see. Okay.
Don't open Pandora's box.
I want to know how many people are in dark mode with me. But for the purpose of this webinar and not to intimidate people, okay, I'm seeing the chat live here. This is a lot of people who are in my camp. I appreciate it, but anyways,
I'm hurt.
well, this is my only mission to accomplish here today. Okay, so I don't know how to add these up and say this is a majority or not a majority. We'll stick in light mode to keep it consistent with the other webinars. But so we've got light mode enabled here. And right now we're looking at the everything level. We're looking at a custom view that I have put together called My Tasks. But I'm just going to briefly break down how we think about taking an agency and breaking it into three main portions. So the three main pieces, which are modeled in our spaces here, are growth, delivery, and operations. And so growth, as you can imagine, is all of your business development, your marketing, your sales efforts. Delivery, and this could be called servicing. Some agencies like to call this clients, but this is basically everything that goes into the actual client servicing component of your business. And this is the piece that most people focus on. This is where we'll spend more of our time today, but not our entire time. And the third one is your operations. And so in here, this is your people and culture. This is your finance. This is your legal, your general and administrative. And so if we had to break these down, then inside of those, if we think about the agency in those three distinct parts, the reason that we're structuring it this way is to have some visibility into how much of our time, how much of our effort goes into each of those three departments. And obviously there's some benchmarks that we want to be shooting for around that, depending on what stage your agency is and what your services are. So inside of growth, obviously we've got our marketing and sales. These are broken into folders with lists underneath them. Delivery, this is the one that we'll spend probably the most time on. And so we set up a folder for each client. It's pretty common to see agencies who we're working with either start with folders for clients. A lot of people do get this right out of the box, or they wind up setting it up as spaces. And there are a couple of cases where spaces may make sense. One big distinction in ClickUp to be aware of is the sharing permissions. And some of them tend to work better if you've got your clients set up as individual folders. So we've got folders for our clients. We'll get to these templates a little bit later in some of these other lists. But inside of that, then we're going to continue breaking work down from kind of the high macro. We've got this client engagement into specifically in a day by day. And as we're living in the daily activity that needs to get done, how do we get real specificity around what's on each person's plate, where tasks and deliverables stand in the process? So we then break down the structure into lists. These lists, which ClickUp has, they're essential. You're not allowed to create tasks without being a part of a list. These are a huge layer of hierarchy that gives ClickUp a leg up over a lot of the competition in the project management space because of the layer of hierarchy that they have. And so we set up each of these lists as a specific phase of the engagement. So if you're a super productized agency, you may even have each one of your lists be a specific phase. If you're not super productized, but you're more customized, you'll probably set up the rest of your lists. You may have an onboarding phase, but after that, it's going to be broken out by service line. And the main reason that we break this out by service line, one is certainly for clarity, but two is to give us some visibility and transparency into where our time goes. And at the end of each month or end of each quarter, or however often, depending on your size, you want to do the analysis. I want to be able to go into your firm and chop up your data and say, here's your profitability or your time spent by each client, by each service line, by each department, by each team member. So that's why we set it up in that way. And if I click into one of these lists, the client onboarding one will start here. So we take each specific task that happens here and say, this is a deliverable. Or, it's fine to call it a task, but think of it as something that you're delivering, a milestone, potentially as you're putting it in here. But this is, this task is essentially like kind of the high level deliverable that needs to happen. In some cases, these will be distinct and be on their own. But using the layer of hierarchy that goes one more drill down here into subtasks is super helpful for organizing your work. So what we'll then do is we'll take each subtask, and each subtask becomes the individually owned task that needs to happen to complete that deliverable. And that terminology is probably a little confusing. I should stick with tasks and subtasks, but just think of this as taking a more complex item that needs to get done and breaking it down into the pieces that are owned by each person. Our rule of thumb for each task is going to be one person. If one person does it in one sitting, that's a task. There are a few acceptable exceptions to that, but that's the way that we think about that. And then the last layer of hierarchy here, and we'll grab an example here, is so we're down to the subtask layer. Now, if we want to integrate processes into what we're doing as well, we're going to include, let's just pull this up here, a checklist. And that's kind of the step-by-step. We use both the task description and the checklist to say, hey, here's exactly how you do this thing. Now, not everybody, if this is something that you do 4 times a day, 5 days a week, it's pretty likely you've got most of the checklist. But especially if you're onboarding new team members or training someone new, to have this layer of detail in here, this provides a lot of value for your team. And so we'll often use the description for things like email templates or additional tools or resources, and then the step-by-step checklist for each individual step in that process. There's a number of other things that you're seeing here. For anyone who's new to ClickUp, I'm going to go ahead and just hit on a couple of those things. We'll take maybe 45 seconds here and hit on a couple main things for each of these. So first one is every task has an assignee. You can toggle on the ability to set multiple assignees if you'd like to, but there's a task owner, obviously, and there's a due date. And those are the 2 most important pieces. Outside of that, there's custom fields. We'll get into a couple of those. There's dependencies. That's probably a little bit more advanced, but super helpful, especially for longer, more complex deliverables. And then if you're using ClickUp's native time tracking, which for a lot of agencies we're working with consolidates their subscriptions, it keeps it on one place and obviously creates a huge asset inside the platform itself. There's your time tracked and your time estimated as well. And then obviously you've got comments and file attachments and a bunch of other stuff in here too that you would likely open or expect to have inside of your project management tool. So that's the hierarchy, how we break down our departments, growth, delivery, and operations into our folders, in this case, client folders, into our lists, service lines or phases of the engagement, into our tasks, which you can think of as deliverables, into our subtasks, which is our individually owned pieces, and then the step-by-step checklist beneath it. So if you're just building out your process right now, don't stress about getting the checklist detail in there today. You can kind of get the bones in and then assign to the people who are the specialists at each of these specific areas or tasks, the job of creating the actual process for that as well. Okay, so there's the structure, and we've talked through a little bit of how we're going to set up our processes and kind of integrate process directly into where the work happens. And that is a crucial element here for this to be successful, is if you want process to get followed, you need to integrate it directly where work gets done. We've seen countless agencies who we've worked with where they've actually spent time documenting process and it lives in a third-party tool, or it lives in a Google Doc somewhere, and no one ever jumps into it. So a huge believer in making your process live right where the work gets done. And the way to do that, I'm sure people are probably curious about the process library, but create for your specific agency. Let's see what's in this example one. Create for your specific agency a full process library of what happens. And at Zenpilot, we've taken and created a whole process library of the common agency deliverables, but for your specific use case, you want to create that as well, where you've got each one of your service lines already has all the stuff that you're going to do every time you bring on a new client. You've ideally got it hooked up where you've set your timelines correctly. You've set estimated times for each task. You've used, in this case, a custom field. So we'll create a custom field for every task here for a role. And what that allows us to do then is when a new client comes on board, we'll either create from a template or create either from a list or from a folder level. We'll create that new client account. We'll create each of the service lines, and then we'll just remap the timeline based on what we have set here in our templates. And we'll also bulk grab by the custom field and reassign to the right people. So if you're running a team that maybe has pods where you've got multiple teams delivering the same service set for different groups of clients, you can quickly reassign work there as well. All right, so there may be some questions on the process integration side. Sophia, feel free to interrupt me if there's anywhere that we need to stop there. But if not, I want to jump over to our views. And one of the most powerful things in ClickUp for agencies is the concept of views. This is one of the other big legs up that ClickUp has in the competition. We're starting to see this become a necessity for other PM tools to add in the ability to switch between views or be able to visualize data in multiple ways. But ClickUp has all these different views. Obviously, out of the box, let me just pull up one here. This is a default ClickUp space. So if you just set up ClickUp and you come in here, you're going to see each of these pieces of work pulled in, grouped by status. Subtasks are hidden. It shows a task, and it's got assignee, due date, and priority shown here. And that's obviously a lot different than what we were just looking at here for the ClickUp client, where we've got each of these different columns. We've got comments directly accessible here. And we've got it grouped by due date in this case and sorted and totals and stuff. So that ability to visualize data however you'd like to is huge and powerful. The flip side to that amazing power and flexibility is there's a lot of ways that people can do things. And if you don't have some clear rules of engagement and some clear templates set up for your team, it can become a little bit chaotic. So I would definitely figure out what those views are, solve for each member on your team, and then begin setting those up out of the gate. So in our example, we'd set up for each new client that's going to be built out, you would have some default lists built here, or some default views built here, our list view for sure, which is the main one, often a board view, an intake form, potentially docs that we'd have as well. I'll just show you kind of a quick overview of what a doc might look like, some additional context around a business. And the docs view in ClickUp has been super helpful for agencies, as has Gantt board, a number of the views that they have as well. So I'm going to go up a layer though, because I talked about there being, like this manager, leadership team, and individual contributor types of roles in each agency. So we're going to go up. I'm just going to use my favorites. Are you guys using favorites, by the way? Is that a common one? I don't think I could make it through the tool. I think it would take me twice as long if I didn't have my favorites. But I run into some people who haven't run across them, and I'm a huge fan. If you're not, definitely encourage it. So out of the gate, we create a couple different views at the everything level. For every single team member, we'll create a view called My Tasks. And so we'll filter this down. We'll do a couple different things here. This is a list view. Choose the assignee as me, set up the right locations. So for example, here, we're going to exclude our process library and our client template. I never want to see tasks show up here. I don't want to mess anything up if we're going to leave this live. And a lot of agencies will leave a version of this live to be able to write back to the template. Some people will archive it because they have it saved as a template anyways. And then tags, we do use a tag called planning, and planning basically means this is the one time it's acceptable to put in a task and not include a due date and an assignee on it. And it's because this is an idea that we need to execute, but we don't yet know, we don't have client approval on it. We're not sure what the priority is. And so this planning tag is helpful for just kind of saying, hey, this is the one thing that we have in here where we don't necessarily need a task, due date, and assignee. And so we filter those out here in this view as well. So this basically gives everyone, and my morning habit is I go in here, first thing I look at is my tasks. I look at what I have in the overdue section. I've got this group by due date. Obviously, I'm showing my time estimated, how much time's tracked, to my comments section here. I am showing, by the way, subtasks, and I'm not just showing them as expanded, I'm showing them as separate tasks. So you need to have this set up if you're going to use the structure that I just walked through, where we're using tasks and subtasks in your hierarchy. So what this basically allows me to do is I go in here, I see, okay, I've got all of this work, and I'm able to see, here's how much time I have estimated. And some days I'll go in and I've got 6 hours worth of overdue tasks and 8 hours today. And it's a quick gut check of, man, I'm not getting through this today. So I need to get a little bit ruthless in terms of how I prioritize, or I'll look for, how much time I have, how much time has been tracked. And I'll be able to quickly see what I have in my tasks. And the next place I'll go is I'll hit N, the hotkey for notifications, and I'll check what new may have come in. And that kind of dictates my workflow for the day. So when you're either full-time in your role as an individual contributor, or you're sitting in that role for a moment, this My Tasks view is going to be the place that gives you clarity into what specifically is on your plate. But now if you're looking across a team or a subsection, or you need to build this out from a different perspective, you may want to look at everything. So again, we'll use some filters. We'll filter out the locations and tag that we don't want to see here, but we'll see work across the team. And you may want to duplicate this and make this a view that you have separately. We also have views in here for overdue. On a weekly basis, we've got one person assigned internally who needs to go in and audit everything that has the planning tag on it, and make sure that should appropriately still be in planning. So there's a number of different. We're trying to get a way to catch all work that happens and make sure nothing gets left behind. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. You may also want to use board view, one of these other types of views. You can use docs view to create a knowledge base. Chat view is used sometimes. Sophia, don't fight me on this one, but in the agencies that we've worked with, at least, there's not a ton of chat usage often if they're currently using a chat tool already. But I think that feature does have a lot of potential in the platform. The workload view, though, from a management perspective, is going to be super helpful. So assuming that you're doing time tracking inside of ClickUp and time estimates, you're going to be able to see, do you want to see 1 week or 2 week? There's all kinds of filters that you can create here. But you're going to be able to see what people have on their plate on specific days. And there's a couple of things that you need to have enabled. So obviously you need to have subtasks toggled on to see this appropriately. And you need to use the Click app to have roll-ups of your time estimates and time tracked as well set up. But once you have that, you're able to see what people have and then reallocate as may be needed. So I've got plenty of capacity here to handle the work that I have, but I also have one day that's significantly too much work. And so I may need to reallocate some of that time as well from tomorrow to today or to the future. So that workload view has been very, very helpful for folks as well. Okay, so I hit on views. There's so many different places we could go there. The one other thing I want to show you is just dashboards while we're on the subject of views. So you've got obviously these views. So if you want to see a grouping of clients, you could certainly grab it at the everything level. You could grab it at the delivery level, or you could use dashboards to aggregate that. And so let's just quickly jump over to dashboards. Let's see what I have pulled up here. So we create a ClickUp leaderboard. Can give people some basic metrics in terms of where the staff is and team is. How you customize this may look different, but I'm going to flip over to our mission control dashboard. Hopefully there's nothing embarrassing on this one. If there is, that's all right. You guys can all make fun of me. So this is not, this is an embed, but we've got a task widget. So we've taken a widget and pulled in a task list. We have a filter set on this one to grab our milestones. So we'll basically look at, and we actually do this in kind of a funky way internally. We'll kind of draft out just in text, what are my milestones for the week, and say, okay, here's what we think we have, plug them in, mark them as milestones for each week, and that kind of, or for a quarter, if you're running EOS at your firm, you're familiar with the ROCKS principle. And so those might be your milestones, or you may mark them in a different way with a custom field, but we do use this milestones. That's one way to grab some tasks. We certainly want to have visibility into the items that I mentioned before. So time tracked by each department. And we'll look at that on a weekly basis, time tracked by month, however you want to slice and dice this. And then obviously we'd also have time tracked by people, task list of what's going on. So you could grab and visualize that data on dashboards, and dashboards in most of the firms that we're working with are severely underutilized. The one cool thing is, for anyone who's not using DataBox for visualizing info as well, you're probably using Data Studio or any of the other platforms out there that also do business intelligence or kind of our analytics dashboards. We use DataBox internally. And so what's cool is you can embed a DataBox data wall directly into your ClickUp portal. And so we're able to kind of see, we've got all of our activity on one side, what's current, where we are at, what's kind of historical here on a short period of time, but we're also able to see what's the impact of that, what's the performance and the results on the other side. And so we've got, here's a CRM dashboard, Facebook ads dashboard, if you want to quickly grab and visualize that stuff. The ability to embed stuff onto the dashboard from third-party tools is hugely valuable. So that is kind of the views and the power of views that you have there, the ability to embed items. I have a couple other things I want to get to. I'm going to show you one really cool repurposing of the standard tasks functionality that will probably be helpful for pretty much everyone on, assuming you're running an agency right now, even any type of service business. Right now we're working with multiple accounts. Basically taking this and created a dashboard. So what you're seeing here in all these columns, these are all custom fields, and I can show you how to set up each of these custom fields themselves. We basically said each task here equates to a client. And so we've got this list of clients, the assignees, basically the account manager, the strategist on that specific account. Each one, we're assuming in this case that we're running a weekly call for each client. And so that's what the reporting time is here. These are all recurring tasks that recur on a weekly basis. We've got what services they get, how the health of the account is doing, what their KPIs might be, billing, what the status of the account is, who's onboarding, offboarding, active, et cetera, and then who the delivery team is. And there's a number of different things that we've put on, different variations of these, when they started, when they ended, what the account duration is. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do this, but I'm just going to go into, we'll say we're taking 15.5 here as an example. So 15.5 is an employee engagement platform. We're pretending that they're a client of ours right now. And so what we'll do is on a weekly basis, when this becomes due, Andrew, who's assigned as the strategist here, he'll go in and he'll update, obviously if there's any changes in services, but he'll go in and update the account health. And obviously we want to standardize what this looks like, and any changes to the account as well. What's cool is we use the comments feature, and we have a standard check-in that they're going to answer every single week. So we ask a series of 5 simple questions. Why would the client be unhappy? We're trying to dig for what's causing pain. Are you happy with the account? Andrew, yourself, how do you feel about the account, independent of how the client feels? Have there been any strategy changes? Briefly explain current performance. What do you need help with? And offer the opportunity to give any other notes. And so this over time obviously builds up a cool backlog of where the client relationship went over time. And this should be a bi-directional platform. This shouldn't just be your strategist reporting on this on a weekly basis. This should be any big changes from that you may find out as an agency owner or someone else in the organization can leave notes here as well. But that's kind of the standard check-in. So this account dashboard, you can set it up and customize it however you'd like. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But what that then creates is the ability to visualize that data in a whole bunch of different ways. For example, you could do a calendar like this and quickly see what time are all the calls happening and quickly prioritize, okay, I probably need to hop on the L-type and the Zoom calls. As an agency owner, I may need to go, or someone leading client success at an agency, I may need to go prioritize those relationships. Ones in green, maybe I don't need to worry about at all, or this is the right time to ask for a referral or references. So how do we set these up? These are all set up. First of all, we have this one grouped by none. You could certainly create a custom field for each pod if you have that in your team, or by each, you could group it by assignee and see each specific strategist's accounts all in one glance. But then what we've done is we've taken our custom fields here and we've gone ahead and edited them. You may go in here to add or edit fields. I think it's more common if I'm working on this that I will, over on the right-hand side, if I'm adding fields, you can add a new column, choose an existing field, or add in a new one. So you saw there the address field or the map field that ClickUp recently added. So if I want to add an HQ address for each one, now I already have an address field in here. But you can create a new custom field and it's going to live directly on this specific list, not necessarily everywhere else. So you can create that in a number of different ways. You can do it there. You can do it from the task level itself, or you can do it here on the custom fields by list piece as well. You're just going to choose the type of custom field that you want and then add it on. All right. That one's kind of that's not a core feature that everyone absolutely needs to have. You may have some way that you're managing that outside of ClickUp right now, but that's one that the agencies tend to love. So I wanted to share that one with you real quickly. Okay, there may be some questions around that, but I want to just talk briefly around the concept of training the team, kind of giving everyone a shared set of instructions and expectations for how they ought to work inside the platform. So I'm going to flip back over to my second desktop. We talked through views, we talked through the account dashboard. And so I want to hit on team training here. And the way that you ought to think about how you train your team. So to me, there's two different kind of separate pieces that you need to keep in mind. The first one are the rules of engagement. So we put everyone who we work with goes through our project management and ClickUp certification program. Everyone throughout the entire agency, or in our case, internally at Zenpilot. What that means is they need to get real clear on what are a piece of that is our 10 commandments of project management inside ClickUp. And those are our step-by-step instructions for, hey, if you're putting a task, first of all, if it's not in ClickUp, it didn't happen. That's rule number one. So the expectation is that we're going to get all work inside of ClickUp. And once it's there, we've got systems for managing and tracking all of that work. Everything needs to have a due date. Due dates matter. Leave a trail. So the idea that if you're shifting a due date for some reason, you're leaving a comment about why that's happening. So kind of your rules of engagement, your cultural expectations around how you're going to use the platform and how you're going to do project management as a whole. The second piece is your specific ClickUp habits. So here's where you want to hit on, what's your morning routine inside the platform? What's your afternoon routine? How do you set up integrations? What integrations get set up? What specifically they're using in the platform itself? And so that would cover things like views and all of those pieces around that are more tactical, more around the tool specifically. So I'm a big fan of setting up and standardizing that training for the entire team so that you're working off of shared expectations at your firm. So I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time here for any Q&A. And Sophia, there's a million different tools inside ClickUp that we could cover. There's a bunch more that I know that you'd like to get to as well. So for anyone who's stuck on this long, I'm not going to make you wait any longer. I appreciate your time and attention. That client onboarding template that we've created, and we didn't really walk through each one of the specific steps there, but fully mapped out. That is all yours. You can go access that zenpilot.com/ClickUp insiders with the dash or without the dash should take you to the same place. But you can go download that. And then obviously, Sophia, I'll turn things over to you. If there's any specific questions that make sense here, we'll answer as many as we can. And then any that folks may have for me, my email address is on the screen. It's just gray@zenpilot.com. You're certainly welcome to check out zenpilot.com or hit me up on Twitter as well. All right, Sophia, I'm going to pass things back over to you.
Thank you so much, Gray. That was really informative. I learned a lot as well watching that, so that was awesome. Before we jump into the Q&A, I just have a few additional things I wanted to point out in relation to creating a routine for yourself and communicating effectively with your teammates. So one feature that you might not be aware of is the pulse view, which is right over here in the left sidebar. And this is one of our features, which we call a click app. So it can be turned on and off. And the idea of the click apps is if you don't need certain features, just turn them off and get them out of your way. But Pulse is really, really great because it gives you a sense day to day who's being active in the platform and when. So over a rolling date period, you can come in and see, who's been spending a lot of time in the application. And you'll also see for each person, if they're online or if they're offline. You can even click on someone's avatar in here to see their trending tasks. So for example, if I click on myself, we can see the trending tasks that I've been working on today and exactly what percentage of my day I'm spending on each task. So it gives you a sense as to where people are allocating their time in ClickUp. Now, a couple of other things I wanted to note would be our work in progress feature. So this is another click app, which can be turned on or off. But if you do turn this on, this is a really great way to get a sense of how much work you have in different stages of your pipeline and to protect your team's capacity. So I'm in the ClickUp board view, which is a great way to see tasks arranged by status. So again, we can see tasks in early phases on the left and then those nearing completion on the right. And there are a few different ways you can actually set a work in progress limit for each status. So if you want to prevent or discourage a certain number of tasks from being allocated to a particular status, you can set up a limit for time or for number of tasks. So I think for your use case, time is definitely the most relevant. So for example, here you can see I set a time estimate of 1 day and 1 hour for the whole task. And I've indicated that I could indicate, that I want to have a 2-day limit here. And the good thing is too, that if you go over that limit, you will be notified. So you can keep track of what's on track and what you have too much of for each of these columns. A couple of other things to note. One thing that I wanted to cover as well is automation in conjunction with forms. So our form view is a really excellent way to streamline any sort of information intake process, whether that's client request forms or maybe even internal feedback from fellow employees that you want to collect in a form. You can indicate different fields that people need to fill out. And when people submit the form, it will actually create a task for you to take action on inside of ClickUp. So these forms can actually be embedded on your website, or you can send a direct link to the form that people can fill out. But a really cool feature to note is that once a task is created from the form, you have lots of automation options you can use to route the form or the task to the correct party. So for example, if I get a new lead in here from my form, I could set up an automation so that when a task is created, I am assigned to the task. So I get a notification that I need to reach out to that lead. Another popular automation workflow might be if you want to loop certain parties in or out of the task based on its status, because it's not always the case that someone needs to be involved in a task from beginning to end. So you might do something like when the task changes from nurturing to attention needed, we would want to add a comment for someone to ask them to step in on the task. So there's tons of different automation options you can explore. And particularly with forms, it's a really good way to kind of take action on any information that comes into the platform from an outside party. In relation to daily to-dos, I also wanted to mention the inbox and home area, which is in the upper left corner of your screen. This is really your centralized place to work from. So if you're looking for kind of a one-stop place where you can see only tasks that are assigned to you, this is definitely the best place to do that. For example, in the inbox area, I will only see tasks that are assigned to me, and they will be grouped by date. So here I'm seeing my assigned tasks that have a start or due date of today or earlier. And then I can see what's coming up next for me, as well as what is recently done. So just to stress that point that Gray mentioned earlier of how important it is to both add assignees and dates to your tasks to really hold people accountable for them. The home area is, again, a really great way to see what's on your agenda for the day. So what's assigned to you that's due today. And then it'll also help you keep track of your trending locations. So any lists, dashboards, or docs that you're spending a lot of time in will be available to you here for just quick access. And you'll also find your trending tasks. So these are the tasks you've been in the most recently and likely are the most important to you. With the lineup feature, you can also add a couple of key tasks that you're committing to getting done in the imminent future. So it's a nice way to just store those tasks for easy access in the home area. And then lastly, we all know that it can be easy sometimes to miss an email or an app mention. And with this area, you can ensure that's not going to happen because you'll always be able to see your assigned comments and app mentions here. The very last thing that I wanted to mention before we open it up for questions is a couple of our integrations that you might be interested in learning more about. So as passionate as I am about the ClickUp chat view, I know that some of you may want to go in a different direction. One great way to explore integrations is with the Slack option here. So this, I'm sure many of you do use Slack for your team communication. So with this integration, you can actually quick create ClickUp tasks from Slack. You can also customized notifications to send to Slack, for example, when you're assigned to a task or when a status changes. And then you can also create even comments in existing tasks or unfurl a ClickUp task in Slack so you can get lots of rich detail about it inside of Slack. And then finally, we have the Teams integration. So many teams do like to use this if you're a Microsoft heavy organization. And this is really similar in that it just helps you to link all of your communication tools directly to ClickUp. So if you're a power user, a ClickUp champion for your workspace, I definitely recommend checking out the integrations area. And that's it for me, but I would love to now open it up and take a look at some of your questions. So let's open up the Q&A tab here. Graham, you ask, any advice on how to set up ClickUp as a ticketing system would be very valuable. Sorry, I know someone else asked this above, unable to find it now. No, that's a great question. So I would certainly recommend checking out our form feature. We have actually a template that you might want to drop into a ClickUp space called bug queues. Regardless of whether you're using this to manage, a quality assurance team, this will give you an example of how you could create a form specifically to collect customer tickets. So it will have all of your desired standard and custom fields in here so you can learn about their request. And then you can send that task to a ClickUp list so you can take action on it. The one thing to note is that you can't send an email from ClickUp yet to respond, but that is something that we will be adding very soon. Let's take a look at, we have a question from Steve. Okay, that looks like it was just a comment regarding ClickUp and HubSpot. Alina, you ask, what are the CRM integrations or dealing with quoting to onboarding stages?
Sophia, I might be able to jump in on this one, and you might have more
please do.
Detail on the integrations themselves. As far as I know, we don't have any direct integrations with a CRM yet, right? To say, hey, we can quickly take a deal and bump it over.
There are several via Zapier, but we don't have a native integration yet.
Yes, that's definitely the way that you want to go. You certainly want an automation set up, and the way that we typically will handle this is say either Zapier or Integromat is also super powerful with ClickUp. It's a little bit more techy than Zapier. Both are really solid tools. And so as soon as that deal gets into the closed won stage in your CRM, we want to automatically zap over. And often we'll do this just so there's we don't actually want it to be 100% automated. We'll create a task for whoever leads operations or leads client delivery at the agency to go through, and basically that task has all the instructions for setting up that account in ClickUp, how to pull from your template your entire client folder and set up the tasks that need to happen in there, how to assign the team, how to add them to the account dashboard, and what data gets added to the account dashboard. Actually, a lot of times that Zap or Integromat scenario will automatically just create the account on the account dashboard for you inside ClickUp.
Awesome. We have another question from Ben. What's a reasonable expectation for an agency to transition to ClickUp? Is this a 30-60 transition or a bigger endeavor?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one first and feel free to add in, Sophia. But most agencies that we're working with, I will say this is accelerated a lot. So one of the luxuries that we have is the ability to plug in a lot of pre-built template stuff for agencies that we didn't have when we first started doing this. So that's allowed us to take what often would take 4 to 6 or even 8 weeks and condense that down often into 2 to 3 weeks. To get what I would say is to get the structure that we walk through today in place. You can get that high level framework for sure in place for most agencies, certainly within 30 to 60 days. What you probably won't have is you won't have the fully developed processes down to the checklist level and with context and details for every single thing. And I would try, and I guess one tip that I would give is I would try and build that into an ongoing habit. In some ways, well, you'd like it to all be there right out of the box. You also want to build this ongoing muscle of thinking of building assets at the firm. So every time we learn how to do something better, that we turn that into a repeatable process or template, or at least once we've done it enough to know that it has real utility, that we can leverage that. So I like to have agency teams build a kind of alternating weekly habit of, we spend an hour 1 week or 30 minutes. If you need to start small, start with 30 minutes a week. And 1 week it's working through and documenting process. You just work off a prioritized backlog that you have. And the next week it's kind of team education. So we're taking that 30 minutes or hour and we're saying, hey, here's a couple of people who found something cool in this workflow that applies to this group of people. We'll do a team training around that specific piece, or bringing someone from the outside to do that. But try and build that habit of building and improving those processes over time.
From James, we have a question. Being on retainers where clients have X amount of time, is there a way to get notified if a certain percentage of the allotted time has been used so you can know they're reaching their max?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't solved this problem in ClickUp yet. There's some outside time tracking tools that handle this, in my opinion, a little bit better. EverHour kind of plugs in pretty nicely. I know that this will come to ClickUp, but right now it's a little bit of a manual process because of ClickUp has all the time tracking tied to such granular levels of detail with the task and subtask. You can't go to a folder level and say, I want to assign 40 hours to a client here. So you can work around that with some custom fields, but often the solutions that we're pulling together and building out either require some type of integration or automation, or they wind up with a little layer of manual work as well, where we've got it built on a dashboard and we're monitoring that on a weekly basis and saying, all right, here's where we are on a weekly basis in terms of time tracked versus time estimated.
One other thing I did want to mention is our calculated column feature in list view. So you see here, let's say this folder is representing a client I'm working with and I have my time tracking and my time estimated. You can actually calculate these columns to find their sum. So side by side, you could see cumulatively for all of the tasks, how much did you track versus your expected estimate for all of the tasks. So that is one way that you could get that quick visualization.
Yeah, that's super helpful to be able to grab from a client level and say, hey, here's the full total, especially if you hide subtasks and quickly go see it and calculate it. To my knowledge, it just doesn't integrate with notifications yet.
Mm-hmm. Miriam, you ask, is there a way to show the team some sort of visual cue when they enter a client folder? For example, when there is a payment issue for a customer, the team should know so they don't do any work. That's a good question. Yeah. Go for it, Gray. Yeah.
We often use tags on that. So we'll just kind of go in and grab all work if it winds up on hold. And we also use the account dashboard. And that's one reason that we have notifications like within the account dashboard for any updates that happen. So someone changes status from being an active client then to likely either delinquent or on hold or inactive, even depending on how you want to set that up. And that'll be a notification to the team not to continue doing work for them. So we'll use that to update and keep everyone in a loop. But then if you want to make sure that they don't do anything, you're going to want to go in and add a tag, or in some cases, I've even seen agencies archive that until the client pays again and then reinstantiate the work.
Yep. The other thing that comes to mind for me would be dependencies. So if you had a task for, payment received, you could actually set that up to block another task that, is the first step in your project related to that client. So you would know that you can't start that task until payment is received. You could even set a due date on the payment task. So if it's overdue, you'd get a notification that it hasn't been received yet. Just looking through some more questions. You kind of touched on a little bit of this earlier, but we have a question from Willie. Are there any ways to integrate or set up sending contracts / invoicing with ClickUp? Gray, maybe you could speak a little bit more about how you manage invoicing and time tracking as well.
Yeah. So there's not a direct integration from ClickUp right now to like a QuickBooks or Xero. So often what happens, and this really depends on how people bill, the majority of clients that we're working with are not primarily or predominantly billing on an hourly basis. But for ones that do, if they don't need to actually, if they just need that kind of full scope to be included in the invoice, but they're not going line by line, what they'll typically do is just take a screenshot, when that monthly invoice is due, which a lot of times they're getting triggered on from the account dashboard. And they'll take a screenshot of what the time tracked by client, that one dashboard that we looked at. They'll just break it down into list by list and then take a screenshot and attach that to the invoice. Then there's other folks who need to bill on a line by line basis. And so they'll use, again, Zapier and Integromat to push those time entries over to, in some cases, a spreadsheet, in other cases, directly into the invoicing software as well. And the contract piece is interesting. I would go back to the same answer around CRM. So once someone signs, that's likely triggering a couple different things. One, it's likely triggering that they're closed won in the CRM, and two, that's probably triggering what happens inside ClickUp as well. Feel free to add any more detail if we skipped over anything on that question.
Philip, you ask, how do you use time tracking without external tools? So we kind of addressed the time tracking issues. How can you make time tracking in ClickUp less annoying and more comfortable? To switch time tracking if tasks are not all listed, not all yet listed. Well, one quick tip I'll offer just while my screen's up is the Chrome extension is a really great way to just quickly on the go without even being logged into ClickUp, either start your timer or just see a recent time log that you want to look into. So that would be a quick way to start and stop the timer. But yeah, I feel like Gray addressed a good amount of those other time tracking concerns.
I do think from a time tracking perspective, I guess the two things I would add is for sure learn the hotkeys in ClickUp. So if you hit T, you can add a new task, and from the Chrome extension, like you were showing, Sophia, you can add a new task from there. But the big win here, the big unlock and power up, is when you have templates for the work that you're doing. Now, obviously, if every single job that you do is 100% custom, including the process, whether that's because you're super early stage or for some other reason, and that's a vast minority of firms that we're working with. But once you have those templates built out, a lot of that work is already in there. So we're not trying to create tasks as we're actively time tracking. The work's already planned ahead of time. And if you want to be able to scale, that's going to be a prerequisite for the agency anyways.
We have time for one more question. So Bill, you asked, can you give a few ideas on how to use ClickUp Docs versus Word and attaching links from Drive? So we do have the option to both integrate with Google Drive and create standalone ClickUp Docs. But the great thing about our docs is, first of all, it reduces context switching. So you can keep all of your knowledge bases, processes, project plans in ClickUp. You can also quickly share a doc publicly with a client outside of ClickUp. And there's tons of ways to quickly add rich editing. So similar to the hotkeys that Gray just mentioned, we have slash commands. So I can add in tables, I can add in headers, I can add in GIFs. You can really do anything to add personality and branding to these docs. These can be either tied to a specific location in ClickUp, like I have here. This is a client success playbook for my account management folder. But you can also create them inside of a task, or even in the docs home area, you can just have standalone docs. It's almost like a giant Google Drive folder directly in ClickUp. Now, the benefit of Drive, of course, would be if you have quite a lot of external collaborators that rely on your team Drive, then maybe you'd want to have the integration set up with ClickUp and Google Drive. But if you're really looking to put all of your work inside of ClickUp, the doc is a great step towards that.
I think that's a great point. I think the one, if you need to collaborate with someone who's not currently in ClickUp and they need to be able to edit it as well, that'd be the one use case that would say, hey, for sure, this needs to be a Google Doc. But yeah, if they can be invited in, or they just need to have it view only, ClickUp Docs have come an awful long ways.
All right, well, we're just about at time. So I want to thank everyone again so much for taking the time to attend. And Gray, it was great co-hosting this with you today. Anything else you wanted to share about how people can find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me here with you. This was fun to do it together. We didn't self-destruct so far, Sophia. So good work. I appreciate everyone tuning in for this. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to us either through the site, zenpilot.com, or email me directly, gray@zenpilot.com. And thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, and if anyone would like to discuss ClickUp, if you have a question for our support team or want to request a discount for one of our paid plans or even a free trial, you can connect with our ClickUp team via chat here if you already have a workspace set up, or you can email us at help@clickup.com and we'll be happy to assist you.
Sophia,
So with that, yeah.
I just saw this come through, and so I just wanted to briefly clarify. Yeah, obviously we're external from ClickUp. We're a separate consultant company, but there are a number of questions around or comments around working with us. So if anyone does, if anyone needs help setting us up, we do have a couple of different programs, either one-on-one or more kind of pre-built stuff that we can plug in for folks. So also happy to work with anyone on that side of things.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Take care.
All.